Welcome to this very special edition of The Author's Voice with KAJ, a show where we explore the stories behind the stories. Here we dive into the worlds created by authors, discover their inspirations, and ensure that you walk away enriched and inspired. And today we have with us Dr. Wayne Baird. He is a stress management advisor and whole being integration consultant who helps individuals and organizations reduce hidden stress and unlock greater clarity. A former chiropractor with 40 plus years in the healing arts, and his works bridges biology, belief, and energy to help people break free from internal tension patterns and reclaim their vitality, purpose, and presence. And today we'll be talking about his book, A Workshop in Adjusting Your Happiness Ratio. Let's dive into the story behind the story. Welcome to the show, Dr. Wade.
Thank you very much for having me, AJ.
You are welcome. Welcome once again to the KAJ Masterclass. This time on the Author's Voice with KAJ. We'll be talking about. So we're talking about your book. But before that, we come to the book. Let's understand a bit about your journey towards becoming an author. You have written several books. So I want to understand what inspired you to start writing. Your work has been quite busy, quite stressful, if I may use that word, and the find time to write is itself is a big thing. So I want to understand your journey towards becoming an author.
Well, there's just too much to say, AJ, and so it's with too much to say and too much to record, it's important to compile what I have to say someplace. And so in a book is the best place I can think of, or having venues like this where I can actually speak publicly. We're going to be talking in this particular book about a topic that's central to a large collection of books that I do. I say large, there's 7 books in the series so far. And the series is titled The Ultimate Journey. It's a seeker's guide, as it says on the cover. It's a seeker's guide into personal freedom. And it accesses probably the most powerful part of the body that we have. And this is a part of the body that you'll never find it on any of your anatomical charts. And that's something called our willpower. The willpower is something that has no conscience at all. All the willpower does is do. It does, and the willpower doesn't care if it does things for you that are very helpful for you, or it does things for you that are actually very unhealthy for you. It's a driving force that just does. And the thing that determines whether it drives you into a good state of being or a bad state of being is what you believe. If you, for example, if you believe that you're a good person with a good karma coming your way and entitled to the greatest gifts and rewards in life, then the willpower will drive you to achieve those great heights. If, on the other hand, you believe that, say, you're a bad person with a karmic debt that you have to pay and probably deserving of penalties and disciplines in your life, the willpower is going to make sure that those things come to you. If you feel that you deserve to be punished, it's not like there's some committee in the neighborhood that goes around door to door and eking out those punishments. They're all self-generated. Okay. And with that, there are a number of different beliefs that are all reaching out to the willpower to do its will to accomplish what we believe. And one of the ones that came up has to do with some of the very most simple beliefs that there are. And in the title of the book, we get into 3 different things. One is your belief about how happy you are. Another is your belief about how unhappy you are, and your belief about how angry you are. And in this title, I talk about the ratio between the amount of anger and the amount of happiness that you have. But it's actually it, it's a conversation about what percentage of your day do you perceive that you're in a state of happiness? What percentage of your day do you feel you're in a state of unhappiness or in a state of anger? Because these are different energetic states of being, AJ. In the state of happiness, you're expressing your joy and connecting with life and spreading out the beauty of yourself. In a state of unhappiness, you're contracting the energy back into yourself to where you can hide, you can self-isolate. Anger is also an outward generation of energy, but it's not a joyous energy. It's a combative energy that we extend out to do battle with the world around us as an expression of our anger. Now, we each have a certain amount, a percentage of each day on the average that we spend being happy or being unhappy. And what's interesting is a lot of people, they are happy like maybe less than 5 minutes in the day. That might be a surprise to you. And it's very rare to find somebody that's 25% of the time or more is happy all the time. Those are rare people. It's not very uncommon to find people whose the percentage of the day they spend in a state of anger is 25%, 50%. I find people that are angry 75% of the time, and that may shock you, but they're out there. You may know people like that yourself. And it is, on one hand, it's beneficial to identify what a person's level of happiness and anger is, but at the same time, it's almost not fair to the person to identify that for them, because people have this thing called cognitive dissonance, where they're in denial about aspects of themselves that are really damaging to them. And it's hard news to find out that you're actually addicted to an energy that's unhealthy for you. It's embarrassing to have that made for you. But once we get a sense of how much anger and how much happiness there are, and we look at them as a ratio, like, for example, suppose you're angry 50% of the time and happy 50% of the time, then the ratio would be 1 to 1. Suppose you're happy 3 times as much as you are angry, that'd be 3 to 1. So there's some ratio depending on what they are. But once you get that ratio, that is so telling about the amount of freedom that a person has in their life. The worse the ratio is from anger to happiness, the less the amount of freedom that people have. And freedom being defined as the amount of joy that you open and connect with life, as opposed to the amount that you have that keeps you separated from life or in a state of attack against life. The two very different states of being. And I know that everyone is psychic enough to look around and go, yeah, I know exactly who he's talking about. I mean, because we all have and you don't want to go around pointing your finger and saying, I saw Dr. Baird said you're this kind. You don't want to do that. But realizing that once you have a sense of what the ratio is, here's where the belief comes in. Hypothetically, suppose a person was angry 40% of the time. There's actually a subconscious belief that says, I believe that I don't feel normal unless I'm angry at least 40% of the time. If suddenly I'm angry 60% of the time, I'm going to bring it back down to where my normal is. If I'm too under that, I will suddenly bring the amount of anger up to that level. The same thing with happiness. If you're happy 30% of the time and suddenly one day you're happy 50% of the time, you're going to bring it crashing back down. So these emotional states in this particular case, they operate as a quota system. When you feel that you're only normal when you're operating at a certain level, that's a quota. And once you're clear about that, you can ask yourself a question. When did this belief identity come to me? If I'm, say, hypothetically, if I'm 50 years old, is that who I was when I was 40? Is that who I was when I was 30 or 20 or 10? Is that who I was when I was inside the womb? And the answer is usually yes. But if you ask the same question, is that who I was before I came into the womb? Then all of a sudden you'd realize that that's not who you were before you came into the womb, because we all come from the eternal domain into our mother's womb. And it's when we come into the mother's womb and we're exposed to all of her beliefs and thoughts, that's when we take that on. It takes place like right within the first week of the time that we're in the womb. It's an amazing transformation. And suddenly we're born into a life where as they say, I don't know how they say it in India, but in the US, they say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Meaning that we have a tendency of being very much like our parents. So I don't know how you say it there, probably something similar. And so once you realize the difficulty that you have to free yourself from whatever state of low happiness or too high of anger, now all of a sudden you're up against something that's one of the most difficult things that there is, and that's taking yourself to a place that's beyond that you were born into. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because every time that you try and take yourself to a place that's outside of the sphere of life of your family, your parents, you're doing something that sounds terrible when you actually say it. It's an abandonment of your family. And there are people that rather than abandoning their family and having that state of separation from them, they will prefer to behave in ways that are unhealthy for them rather than going through the heartbreak of abandoning the family's way of being.
Right, Dr. Wayne. So to understand it better, means who is this book for? What is it that you want them to do? And even you talked about why do some people choose to be unhappy so much of time? If it started in this life, and then where it suddenly happens that they wake up in the morning and look so unhappy, making the world around them very, very unhappy.
That's a really good question. And the choice of words that you're using is, are they choosing that? And that's a real stretch, because I think that if you're born into that, and that's what it's almost like saying you're choosing your hair color when in fact it's determined by your DNA. You're as much a recipient of your parents' beliefs and behaviors as you are your hair color and your eye color and your height. The old idea, the tabula rasa, we're born as a blank slate, that's not, I don't know who came up with that, but that's not very accurate, because you're pretty much born complete. It's like a spider or an animal. They're born and they know how to do the stuff that they're supposed to do because it's ingrained into them when they're in the womb or in the egg or whatever else. And there's so many things that we learn from our parents, but the basics of how to do that are implanted into us. So who is this for? This is to allow people to get an idea and understanding that there's actually a measurable amount of their time, their day, when they can say, this is the degree to which I'm in an angry state or which I'm in a happy state. And my recommendation is that to do that without having somebody measure it for you, so that you don't have to go into that state of cognitive dissonance about it, and you can have an honest conversation with yourself. And when you come to a place where everybody's somewhere between 0 and 100%, and if you get a sense that the amount of happiness you have in your life is less than what you would like, or if you realize that the amount of anger or unhappiness is much higher than you'd like, know that there is a way that you can readjust it, because beliefs are all made up. They're made up from your parents primarily. And what I tell people is that if you want to make up a belief, make up one that really works well for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Dr. Wayne. So you talked about that a lot of this is taken from the parents. Then why is it that so many people, they go different directions? Their temperament is different than their parents. Their, the things that they do is different from their parents. Why this happiness and unhappiness part gets stuck? A lot of parents are unhappy people. Their children are happy. A lot of parents are very happy people. Their children are unhappy. A lot of parents are saints. Their children are criminals. Why do they carry this unhappiness part? If you say that, okay, it all comes to the parents. Can't they choose to be happy, whatever the way their parents have brought them?
Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of happy people out there. I don't want to paint a picture that we live in a miserable world, although there are a lot of miserable people. I remember when I went to Chennai as an invitation from a gentleman there in order to try and help establish something called the School of Happiness. The Riverbend Project is south of Chennai. And the reason for that is because he perceived that although there's a vast amount of great professionals in India, doctors and lawyers and engineers and such, there's also a lot of really stoic and unhappy people. And it was his goal to try and bring in a process to try and increase the amount of happiness there. And so that wasn't for the people that are already happy, but it was trying to create a venue so that the people that weren't particularly happy, that they would have a means of finding a greater level of happiness. The first thing that you have to do is have an honest assessment as to just how happy, how unhappy, and how angry you are. And then you can start making the shift in it. And one of the things that you're going to end up doing is, rather than creating a greater amount of abandonment between you and your family, take them with you, because they're unhappy and angry because their parents were unhappy and angry. And their parents were unhappy and angry because their parents were angry and unhappy, because it's a chain that passes down generationally. It's the family jewels, if you will. And who you are is the latest recipient of what's been passed down generationally for a long, long time.
Absolutely.
And so if you can do some healing, some generational healing, so that it's not just you, I want to be a better person and I don't care if I leave my parents behind. That doesn't usually work, because people end up falling back into orbit with wherever their parents are, because they'd rather be miserable than to be more abandoned from their family. It hurts to be separated from your family. And it hurts when you go back to your parents' house, it hurts to know that there's only certain things you can talk about.
Absolutely, Doctor.
And if you were to measure, say 10 on the scale says, me and my parents are 100% in lockstep with each other, we're just totally cool with each other. And 0 on the step says, we don't get along very good at all, and we don't have a lot in common. And when we get together, we're just polite to each other, so we're not fighting with each other and so forth. And to have that level of not being in alignment, in a state of love with your parents, they made you. Come on, you only have one mom and dad, and to not try to have a relationship that's rewarding and filled with love, then the more you do to separate yourself from them, the more you interfere with the love and togetherness with your family. And if you take your family with you, then instead of abandoning, your focus is on bringing yourself back together into a state of unity to the loving people that loved you enough to create you.
Absolutely, Dr. Bain. But nowadays, a lot of people talk about self-care, and amidst that, they talk about toxic family, toxic relationships, and they say you should leave these toxic relationships behind and move forward. And here you are talking about, taking everyone along, especially your parents. Means how do you calibrate both the things? Because toxic people or unhappy people will pull you down, and you got lots of things to achieve, especially in a Western world. In Indian culture, there's still a lot of people try and take everyone along, but there is a, even in India, in this part of the world, there is a lot of pressure on people to manage everything. What is your understanding on this?
Toxicity isn't just a single element. Toxicity is an accumulation of insults and beratements and different elements of separation between you and your family. And each time you make them wrong, each time they make you wrong, each time you separate conceptually from them, so that what you say, what you think, what you do, and how you be becomes different from them. Each time it separates, and it adds another element of toxicity to it. And pardon the expression, it just becomes another turd on the big dunghill of life in the family. And that's one of the things that you want. If you value your family life, then it's something that you want to move toward, is integration rather than more divisive separation and abandonment. And I say that out of love, and I say that for the reason that I went through my own period of making my parents wrong, and how come when I come home with these new ideas, you don't embrace them? Instead, you feel like I'm making you wrong for bringing new ideas into the house.
Absolutely.
It's not just all on the children. There's an education for the parents also, realizing that when the children come in with new ideas, it's not because they're there to make the parents wrong. It's that, doggone, you sent them out in the world to learn. Don't make them wrong when they come back with what they've learned. And if I'm a parent also. I'm a child and a parent, and that's what I try and tell my children. Don't be afraid to bring home what you learn, because I'm not too late to learn from you also. It's not just that you learn from me, I'm going to learn from you. And to be big enough as a parent to acknowledge that the world is always changing. And the things that were absolute true 10 years ago, 20 years ago, they change, they shift, they go through evolvement. Every paradigm in life is momentary. Every perfection is momentary. What you see as absolutely perfect right this minute, 5 minutes from now, all of a sudden you go, oh, wait a minute, it was perfect except for this here. Let's make this change. Now it's perfect. Oops. But 10 minutes from now, you go, oh, wait a minute, one more thing. We got to change this here. And you see that perfection is an ever evolving thing that takes place with us. And if you get stuck with one concept of perfection that it can't change, then suddenly you're going to be forward in time, realizing that you missed the boat on being able to make some changes. Like a quick story. My grandmother was born in 1989. She lived to be 102. And in that time, when she was growing up, they still had cholera, dysentery, and a lot of waterborne diseases. And good sense says, don't drink the water. You're going to live longer if you don't drink the water. And so she refused to drink water. She might have a cup of coffee or two a day. And it's startling that she lived so long without ever drinking water. And even years later, after they got water sanitation down and it was safe to drink, she still wouldn't drink water because the belief that she carried around as a little girl that was given to her by her mother, it came from her mother, and she still wouldn't drink it, even though water got healthy. And she passed that down to my father, and my father refused to drink water because his mother didn't drink water, because her mother didn't drink water. And my father died at 70 years old from kidney failure from not drinking any water and only having coffee every day. So that's a very personal story of mine about how if you get stuck in a belief that you interfere with it evolving to a continually greater state of perfection, then it becomes an interference in your life. It's a testament to it's important that we be fluid enough to allow the goodness in life to keep evolving in our life.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, in a nutshell, Dr. Wayne, what is it that you want readers of your book, what insights, what key message you want them to take away with them?
I'm asking people to be willing to take an honest evaluation of themselves and get a sense of how much happiness, unhappiness, and anger they have. And if they discover that there's more unhappiness and anger than they would like, or if there's not as much happiness in there as they'd like, there's a whole formula inside the book that'll tell you exactly how to create some of the shifts in there. And it's a very inexpensive book. And if you are some of the people that are willing to take the jump and make that increase in a better state of life for you, I'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely.
Because that's the best kind of feedback that I can get, because it's a very simple and almost magical process.
Absolutely. There's much to learn from you about this and happiness and also many other things. And I'm sure a lot of people would want to connect with you. What is the best way for them to do so?
I'm available on, I can be contacted through that particular book or through any of the other books that I've written. I'm available on LinkedIn, and I even have a personal website for people that I do therapy with. It's Dr. Wayne Baird at yahoo.com. And I'm happy to receive emails, and I do therapy with people literally all over the world.
Wonderful.
And I'm looking forward to working with greater groups of people, because there's over 8 billion people on the world. And so working one at a time, the arithmetic doesn't work out very well for that, AJ. So it's important to get a bigger contingent of people that understand the value of shifting the beliefs to where they work better for you. Because if there's ever one thing that I would love to be a part of, is I would like to be a part of helping this world become the kind of world that the family of the stars would be proud to come and visit us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of The Author's Voice with KJ. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
I appreciate you having me on.